Why are we so inflamed? And what is the problem? So, I don't know if you've heard this before, but if you, hopefully you have, that they say the root of all chronic disease is chronic inflammation. So, one of the things when we look at inflammation, we have to understand it is the body doing the right thing at the right time. In fact, you've probably heard me say this in many different aspects of health. Your body is always doing the right thing at the right time. And yet, when a symptom appears, we have a tendency to curse it, ignore it, or medicate it. But symptoms are ways that your body is actually communicating with you. So when we're in a state of chronic inflammation, the body is telling you that it's under a crisis. And in order to handle this crisis, it has brought on this immune response. That's what inflammation is, that it's brought on this immune response to protect it. Now, with that understanding in mind, then we have to look at some of the signs and symptoms of chronic inflammation. And they can be everything from joint pain, like aches and pains, to brain fog, to bloating, to trouble with hormones. Hormones can be an inflammatory process problem, and I'll explain that here in a second. So the symptoms very much look like anything that has taken you out of your own vibrancy. So if you're living in a body that has great energy all day, you move really well, you're the weight you want to be, your brain is on fire every single day, you have great mental clarity, there's probably, a good chance you don't have chronic inflammation. But if that's not you, if you're struggling to lose weight, if you have a lot of chronic pain, if your brain fog is bad, now we have an inflammatory situation. So I want to take this conversation down to the cellular level. Each cell is like its own intelligence within you. And each cell is always responding to the environment that you put it yourself in. Now, this is a key point, and this is something I have been trying to express to my Reset Academy members. Whatever environment you put your body in, it will respond to that environment. So if you put your body in a loving, nurturing environment, it will respond by giving you loving and nurturing healing responses. If you put your body in chronic environments where you are constantly eating the wrong foods, hanging around with negative thinking people, toxifying your body with toxic products that are pretty much everywhere now, then your body has to protect itself. And it does that by creating this inflammatory reaction. And each one of these cells on the outer part of the cell has a cellular membrane. And that membrane, the job of that membrane is to breathe. And so it allows the nutrients to come in. It invites hormones to come into the cell. It wants all the goodness that you are doing on a day-to-day environment. It wants to bring that into the cell so the cell can work how it needs to work. But when we are chronically in a state of eating the wrong foods, not moving our body, not getting light, thinking horrible thoughts, chronic barrage of physical, emotional, and chemical toxins, what happens is that cell creates some inflammation around the outside of this membrane so that those toxic things don't get into the cell. But the other thing, now that it has like a wall up, now that it's not an amoeba that's allowing it to flow in and out, now that it has this protective mechanism in it, it can't bring your vitamins in. It can't bring your hormones in. It can't bring the good things in because the cell is on shutdown. So we have to start to look at inflammation as the body's initial step at saying there is a crisis at hand and I'm going to do everything I can to protect myself. But we also have to look at inflammation as a systemic problem. It's not just you sprained an ankle. An ankle sprain is a great example of an acute inflammatory process. So a little background on me, I was a competitive tennis player as a child. And if you've played tennis, especially growing up, you're bound to get a sprained ankle at one point. A lot of moving side to side, for front and back. And I chronically sprained my ankle, and I would twist the ankle, and then the ligaments would be damaged, and then the ankle would swell. And so I knew in that moment, rest the ankle. You couldn't walk because you've injured the ankle. You can see the visible inflammation, and yet you knew in that moment you had to rest because the body was healing itself. The challenge we have with systemic chronic inflammation is that when we are eating the wrong foods, thinking the wrong thoughts, hanging out with the wrong people, exposing ourselves to toxins, it's the same analogy. The cells are under attack and they need to protect themselves so they can heal. So it creates this inflammatory response. But we don't slow down to heal ourselves when brain fog kicks in. We don't slow down to heal ourselves when joints become stiff and achy. We call that aging. We call brain fog menopause, maybe, or we call it, I'm losing my focus. We give it other labels, but it's the same thing as the sprained ankle. There is a healing effect going on, and your body needs you to honor it. So when it comes to cellular healing, there are 3 areas I really want you to think about. First is one way that we can start to really heal the outer part of these cells is to look at our nutrition. And when we look at our nutrition through the lens of inflammation, the number one thing that causes your cells to inflame, this outer cellular membrane, are the wrong oils. So you've heard of insulin resistance, hopefully. Insulin resistance is where your cells can't allow insulin to push glucose in. And everybody thinks that insulin resistance is a too much sugar issue. And insulin resistance is not, sugar leads to insulin resistance, but actually the number one thing that's worse than sugar for insulin resistance are the bad oils. Because every time you eat the bad oils, what you're doing is you're causing this outer cellular membrane to inflame. So the bad oils, I wrote about them in Fast Like a Girl. I've got them in Eat Like a Girl that's out for pre-order right now. I keep coming at those bad oils as much as I can because they are the number one challenge with nutrition. So here we are over here talking about protein, which I love the conversation on protein. But let's go back to the basics for a hot moment. The worst thing you can do for a chronically inflamed body is to eat the wrong oils over and over and over again. These are your canola, your sunflower, your safflower, your vegetable oils, your soybean, partially hydrogenated. Again, there's lists in all the books that I have been writing. So the number one thing for chronic inflammation is we've got to get rid of these toxic oils and then come in with the good oils. You've heard of people who all of a sudden are, start taking an omega-3 supplement, or they start eating more clean salmon and their cholesterol changes. I just heard a story about this morning. Why did that happen? Because that person brought good oils into their body and repaired the inflammation around the outer cell. And now all the good workings inside the body can get into the cell and can actually do its job. So the first thing with nutrition is the oils. The second thing for cellular inflammation with nutrition is your sugar load. Of course, ultra-processed foods. These are your highly refined sugars, your highly refined flours. They're causing this cellular inflammation, and most of the time they're mixed with the bad oils. So this is why you'll hear me over and over and over again talk about nature's carbs, nature's carbs, nature's carbs. That's what I want you to focus on, is nature's carbs. These are carbs that come out of the earth. Your fruits, your vegetables, they have fiber in them. So instead of going for chips or going for a piece of bread, how about you go for a carrot or for apples, something that has more fiber in it, and that we move our sugar tooth over to what nature has given us. And then the third on nutrition is something that you're hearing me talk more and more about, which is obesogens. In Eat Like a Girl, I have list after list after list of obesogens. And obesogens are toxins that are allowed in our food, and our body senses them as trauma. They are a chemical trauma to our body. And so the cells inflame. So learn how to read an ingredient label. I have a whole tutorial for you on Eat Like a Girl. I literally took an ingredient label and I put it in that book and I deconstructed it so that you all can figure out how to read an ingredient label, because it's gotten really tricky. And so it's very difficult to be able to read ingredient labels. So when we look at cellular inflammation through the lens of nutrition, we have to look at those three things: oils, carbs, what kind of carbs are you eating, and stop eating toxins. Okay, before we count calories, before we count macros, super important. Okay, so that's the first category for inflammation. The second category for inflammation, I keep saying it over and over again, and I want to make sure I really highlight this because this was Bruce Lipton's work. And that is, careful what you think, because your thoughts can create cellular inflammation. So Bruce Lipton, we did a podcast years ago with him, and you can go back and listen to that. And one of the things that he defined in his lab was that when we think negative thoughts, it inflames the outer part of your cells. So who are you hanging around? What are you listening to? The thoughts in our brain are programmed by the environments we put ourselves in. And some of those environments were childhood environments that we still have those belief systems. But if you don't like the way your thoughts are, if you don't like, you can't get to an optimistic place, really look at who you're letting into your brain. I brainwash myself all the time with books. I have books spread throughout my whole house. I pick them up, I read a little bit of somebody's intelligent mind, and I'm like, I want their mind in my mind right now. That's the power of books or YouTube videos or podcasts. One of the benefits of listening to a podcast like this over and over and over again is that you start thinking in a more healthy way, because my voice starts to become your voice. And I hope it becomes it in all the brilliant ways that my belief in your body, if you listen to this podcast over and over and over again, you eventually start believing in your body, because it starts to create a rhythm and neuroplasticity in your brain that tells you you are powerful, tells you that you can heal from anything. That's a big part of my message, is that you're living in a miraculous body. Get out of rhythm with our body has to protect itself, and it does that through cellular inflammation. We have circadian rhythm, we have hormonal rhythm. And when we are putting ourselves out of our natural rhythms, the body responds by inflaming. I'm not going to go into all the details on rhythm. There's a lot to unpack there. One of the greatest podcasts that I've done on circadian rhythm was Sachin Panda. So go back and listen to that. All of, Fast Like a Girl and Eat Like a Girl about a female's hormonal rhythm. But I really want women, men need to know this too, but I really want women to understand we are rhythmic beings. We're constantly in a state of expansion and contraction, waxing and waning, very much like the moon. And so when we do the same thing over and over and over again, and we don't honor these rhythms, we end up creating an inflammatory response. So when you ask, what is inflammation? It's complicated, right? Because your body is responding with protection by shutting off the cell. It shuts off the cell so good can't get in, but that also means toxins can't get out, and the bad can't get out, and the cell starts to have a dysfunctional moment. So we've got to look at those three things. What am I eating? How am I eating? What kind of rhythms am I putting myself in? And what am I thinking? We have to go through that. Where's my mind going? Who am I listening to? If you don't like the way you think, look at I really believe in this the five closest people to you. What are they saying? Because you may have adopted their thought patterns. Let's have a conversation about protein in the context of longevity, because there's so many of you here on my channel I know that are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, some of you even in your 40s, where you're like looking ahead and you're trying to figure out how you slow the aging process down. And so on one side of the conversation, we have this quest to stay young. And I love that. I mean, we should all be feeling vibrant and love living in our skin. On the other side of the equation, we have a lot of conversation in the culture right now about protein and how much protein and what should women do to get more protein, and what about postmenopausal women? Should they be doing protein? Like, the protein conversation has been cracked open, and it's a little bit of the wild, wild west out there. So what I really want to do in this video is talk about making sure that you are choosing a protein that supports your health, that slows down aging. And it's a very simple concept that I think at the end of the video you will really know how to master. Before I dive into that, I do want to say, especially for my menopausal friends out there, that I am a fan of protein. I am a fan of the 1 gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight. I think that is a great formula. The research is very clear on that. And so if you are, in those postmenopausal years and you're noticing you're losing muscle, and you're trying to build up your strength and vitality, I really encourage you first, before you go into what I'm about to teach you, I really encourage you first to think about making sure you're getting enough protein. And those of you that are plant-based, same thing. We want to make sure that you're getting enough protein. And if you don't feel like you're getting enough protein, I always recommend the addition of an amino acid supplement. Also, just FYI, pre-orders for Eat Like a Girl are out, and there are so many recipes in here all built around this concept of eating great protein, because for hormones, there is an interesting concept that I put in Eat Like a Girl called the Key 24. And there are 24 nutrients that you need to be getting on a daily basis to make hormones, whether you are 90 or you are 20. And many of those nutrients can be found in protein-rich foods. So I'm a huge protein fan. It is the hero macronutrient. With that in mind, how do you make sure that it supports a healthy body? And I call it eating clean protein. So just like we've been having this beautiful conversation in the culture of, this has been like the last 20, 30 years, hopefully you've heard this, that not all fat is equal. We've said, fat is good because we have good fat, but the bad fat is not good. So we've separated out this macronutrient and we've said good fat, bad fat. And now in conversation, we don't just throw fat out there. In Eat Like a Girl, I'm really trying to introduce this concept that there is good carbohydrates and there are bad carbohydrates. I call them nature's carbs and human-made carbs. For the sake of this video, I really want to emphasize that there are clean proteins and there are dirty proteins. And dirty proteins are meat specifically that are factory farmed meat. So one of the challenges with factory farmed meat is that they are inflammatory. So think about this for a moment, and I'm sure all my plant-based friends have left this video and know that there's plenty of protein in plants. You just have to really look at diversifying those sources so you get all those amino acids. But for those of you that are omnivores and you eat meat, I really want you to start to look through this lens of, is this animal I'm about to eat, was it raised in a factory, or was it allowed to graze in a pasture? Because that makes a difference. Factory farmed meat have this inflammatory component to it because, check this out, this great phrase I highly recommend you keep in your mind, which is whenever you are eating meat, you are eating what that animal ate. So you are what the animal that you eat, what they ate goes into you. So you always want to be thinking, like, what did that animal eat? And a lot of these animals in a factory farm are fed a lot of grains. and they're fed genetically modified, pesticide-sprayed grains. And they're fed that, and a lot of them are injected with growth hormone and things like that to plump them up so there's more meat. And so when you're ordering this conventional style meat or at a restaurant, or you're getting it at your grocery store, you are literally getting a package of toxins that is creating an inflammatory response in your body. I have seen this in our community on continuous glucose monitors. It fascinates me how you can see protein really spike someone's blood sugar if it is a factory farmed animal. Whereas then I can give somebody grass-fed meat and they don't spike their blood sugar at all. And that factory farmed meat is actually inundated with omega-3 fatty acids. So much to talk about just in the benefits of more of a grass-fed approach to the animals that you are eating. Now, there are some interesting studies on this, and I want to point them out to you. There was a 2023 comparison of grass-fed and factory-farmed beef. And so they found that the factory farmed, also known as conventional beef, contained higher levels of long-chain polyunsaturated fats. Check this out, that is the same inflammatory fat that you find in vegetable oil. So those of you that are out there like, I don't eat bad fats, I don't eat vegetable oil, I know it's inflammatory, my next question to you would be, well, but do you eat factory farmed meat? Because if you do, this 2023 comparison of these two types of meat is showing that that's inflammatory. So when you are eating, just so we're all really clear, when you are eating these grass-fed animals, you actually are getting a huge benefit. You're not only getting the amino acid punch, you can get the amino acid punch from the factory farm, but you're also getting an incredible increase in omega-3s, which is really powerful. You're getting also anti-inflammatory nutrients like butyrate and B vitamins. So it's a more nutrient-dense meat. So we want to avoid the factory farmed, so that we can not create that inflammatory response. But we also want to lean into these grass-fed animals so we can get the added nutrient punch that they deliver along with the amino acid profile. Now, the second thing, and this is something I hope you all know, but if you don't, it's really important that we talk about it. And that's that factory farm meat has more antibiotic resistance in it. It can create these residues of antibiotics are in them, and they can destroy your gut microbiome. They can lead to the antibiotic resistance that the world has seen when we started to kill bugs with antibiotics in our foods, and we were taking antibiotics all the time, and we were putting antibacterial cleansers on our hands and in our mouth. The name of the health game is not just to kill every single bug in your body. But when you eat a factory farm meat that has been completely inundated with antibiotics, what you're getting is you're getting those antibiotics into you. So those of you that are like, I don't take antibiotics, I know they're bad. Well, are you eating meat, conventional factory farm meat with antibiotics in them, because you're also destroying your gut if you're doing that over and over and over again. And what was interesting, there was a 2021 study that found 95.4% of factory farm beef and lamb contained residual antibiotics in them. And that they went on to look at other studies, and there was a 2023 study that found that meat treated with antibiotics often transmits this antibiotic-resistant bacteria that can disrupt your gut microbiome. So again, when we're looking at longevity, we can't just turn away and say meat is bad and that it's going to speed up aging. We have to take meat and say there is bad meat and there is good meat. And factory farm conventional is the bad. It is creating inflammation. It is destroying your gut microbiome. And when we look at this regenerative approach to pasture-raised meat and animals, We have the added nutrients. We don't get all that inflammation. We don't get all that antibiotic residual. And we have the added nutrients, not to mention the big punch of fatty acids like omega-3s that can really lower inflammation, which is so interesting because when we say protein, I mean, let's go back to the cultural zeitgeist right now, which is 1 gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight you want to be. That is the general rule at this moment. But what we need to go into is a deeper conversation that it's not just the amount of protein that will determine your health, it is the type of protein. And when we're doing this factory farm, you're getting such there's not a win there. You're getting such a negative response in the body. But if we just change the conversation to pasture raised, we can actually start to look at meat as more of a health food. So I hope that helps. I have so much on protein here. I have some incredibly delicious recipes that Chef Jeff made, who was former owner of the Valencia Gold Hotel. My celebrity chefs created some incredible recipes. And we really dialed in protein, you know, as a team between me and Chef Leslie, who did the plant-based recipes, and Chef Jeff, who did the omnivore ones. We really sat and talked about principles like the one I'm teaching you right now and how to bring you recipes that were supportive of your health and didn't fall prey to just saying, here's protein. And so we need to have a deeper conversation if you're going to use protein as a health tool.
The chronic foods that people eat to cause chronic inflammation and disease is anything a man-made, human-made, both men and women. It is this ultra-processed, ultra-refined food is absolutely destroying the world right now. It's contributing to chronic inflammation and chronic disease. And you mix that with the packaging. There's a lot of discussion right now about microplastics being in everything and how harmful that is to our system. Just because food is allowed in your supermarket does not mean it's healthy. This is the sad reality. So if you want to avoid the chronic diseases and the chronic inflammations, we have to get back to the simplicity of food. And the simplicity of food, again, is everything that I've been talking about here, which is eat the food that nature provided, not the food that you found in a lab or was created in a lab. So there's gonna be like a cracker. A cracker had to be created in a lab or in a warehouse, is what I was gonna say, but that sounds so dirty. But in some kind of man-made environment. So what if I pick an apple off a tree, like nature made that? Whereas if I grab a bag of crackers, there was a human that had to put all those ingredients together. So let's lean into nature's food and get away from the human-made food. And with that, I'm going to really encourage you to learn how to read a label. This is why I did a whole section on it in Eat Like a Girl. But if you want inflammation to come down, you got to get away from the ultra-processed foods. You got to get away from the toxins that are in our food. It's gotten complicated, I know, but that's how important it is when we're looking at food through this lens. Just because they put it all in the supermarket and we call it all food doesn't mean it's all food, all medicine for your body. Nature made medicine for your body. Humans destroyed it. With the rise in awareness of healthy eating, a lot of big food companies are trying to promote healthy food to eat instead. What are some of the fake healthy foods people should be aware of that still cause inflammation and damage to their health? Yeah. So the first thing you got to understand is that there is a profit in keeping you addicted to food, and there is a profit in keeping you sick. I'm really sad to be, if that's the first time you're hearing this, I'm really sad to be the one delivering you that message. This is why I really feel strong that so many people are in health crises right now that are not their fault. But their health is still their responsibility. So the first part of this question being that so many people are waking up to the importance of healthy food warms my heart. It's like, yes, yeah, that's what we need to do. That's it. We need to just stop overcomplicating this and just get back to healthy food. But because profits are at stake, the food industry has gotten very crafty with the labeling. So I have mentioned this many times, but worth mentioning again. And I brought her on my podcast, Vani Hari. But Vani is the food babe. And I love this woman. She has been going after the food industry for a very long time. She actually was one of the people that overturned, got the toxic oils out of In-N-Out Burger and got them to put the correct oils in their fries, which is huge. And she would sit in the waiting room of big corporations until the CEO came out to try to hold him or her accountable for the toxins, chronic disease toxins that they were putting in their food. And one of the things that she taught us, all of us, in this interview that I did with her on the Resetter podcast was that the term natural flavors is actually code for they can put small amounts of toxic food into that ingredient and put it all under natural flavors. So chemical flavor enhancers like monosodium glutamate. Now there are some really good monosodium glutamate. That's an interesting ingredient because nature provides a lot of positive, healthy monosodium glutamate products. But then there's a synthetic version, a lot of the that enhances taste. So something really interesting that I'll share with you that might help you understand the food industry. So my son right now is training, my 22-year-old son is training to be a chef. And we have been geeking out on the taste profile of the tongue together. And he was sharing with me from a chef's perspective that umami is a taste that allows more parts of your tongue to be stimulated. Now, when I heard that, I was like, well, I wonder if more parts of your tongue are stimulated, does that mean then that you get a bigger dopamine response? Or does that mean that you stimulate parts of more more neurotransmitters get stimulated in that, and maybe more brain centers get stimulated in that when the brain actually gets more stimulation from our foods? And so he had me thinking. So I started to go and look at some of these chemicals that they put in our food, like monosodium glutamate, like the synthetic version. And what I found out is absolutely the food industry knows this. And so like artificial colors, artificial flavors, monosodium glutamate. I'm trying to think what some of the other neurochemicals, like even like things like NutraSweet, they have ways of stimulating the tongue so that we have a deeper, like, oh, that tasted really good. I want more of that. This is why we got to come back to nature's foods, because the food industry is absolutely controlling our taste buds because they understand this umami flavoring in our tongue. And they understand that when they can get like sweet and sour, those tastes are on the outside of your tongue and on your tip of your tongue. And so the brain response sometimes can be a lot different. So, but the chemicals they're putting in food actually is driving us to eat more of this toxic food. So natural flavorings is one of them, artificial colors and red dyes. You'll see red dye number 5 or 10 or all that. You'll see whenever you see on the front of a package, if you see natural on the front, that means nothing. There's no regulation around the word natural. When you see healthy on a product, no regulation. This is why eating foods without a label are your best bet, because the food industry has gotten really crafty. So how does that look? Everything I teach you, I apply to myself. So if you looked in my refrigerator right now, you'd see a lot of fruits and vegetables and meats, and I do dairy. And so fermented products, fermented yogurts, fermented sauerkraut. And, you know, if you looked in my pantry, there's not as much in there. There's maybe some legumes. There's, I do gluten-free pastas every once in a while. Okay, have you been watching my videos and you're like, I don't know how to put this stuff all together? You might need my fasting lifestyle free course. I'll teach you exactly how to do it. Just click on the link above. It'll take it to you, and it's absolutely free. My gift to you. And so this is where, if you are a bit of a home chef, it really works for you, or you are willing to put some ingredients together to make your own meals. your health will really thrive. And in Eat Like a Girl, I gave you over 100 recipes in there that are outstanding and easy to make. So those of you that are getting that book, you will have access to professional recipes made by master chefs, which is really cool.
Okay, if you loved this video, you're going to want to check out the next video of my food series. On this video, want to talk about the healthy foods that you might be eating that will stop you from a long and healthy life.